And we are live. Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to She Built It Boss Lady Chronicles. I am Sharita Gaskins-Tillett. I am your host. I am super excited to have you joining us this evening. I am really excited about our guest and about our topic. Before we jump into things, though, I just want to remind you to please say hello to us in the comments. If you have questions, definitely put your questions in the comments. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay, still put your questions in the comments because our guests would be happy to address your questions as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me. Just an announcement, or I guess a couple of announcements. It is still Cultivate Confidence Month in the Boss Lady Dream Builders Facebook group. So if you're not aware, every day this month we are introducing a confidence building exercise that you can incorporate into your daily activities to help to boost your confidence because we find that a lot of women just are kind of lacking in confidence, and we want to build it up because that makes us more assertive and helps us to take more control of our lives. And then the other thing I want to remind you of is registration is open for a weekend for me, the premier wellness experience for professional women, taking place in Grand Cayman, October 31st to November 3rd. So please reserve your spot. Technically, early bird pricing ended yesterday, but I haven't taken it down. So if you get over there and do your registration before I take it down, then you will still get the early bird pricing. So tonight we have an interesting topic. We're going to be talking some about infertility. And, I say interesting because infertility affects 11% of all women. And among professional women, especially physicians, that number is even higher. And a lot of times women face these challenges almost in quiet and behind closed doors. You don't realize how prevalent it is. And so my guest tonight is Dr. Erica Bove, and she's doing all she can to help to kind of destigmatize things, but also to help women to journey through infertility in a more positive, holistic way. So I'm not going to pretend that I can see. I'm going to put my glasses on so I don't mess anything up as I read her bio. So Dr. Erica Bove is a double board certified OB-GYN and reproductive endocrinologist at the University of Vermont, as well as a certified life coach. She is also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. She has a keen interest in marrying an evidence-based approach with intuitive knowing in the context of a trusting relationship. She empowers physicians to build their families with confidence and self compassion. Her mission is to heal and support the healers and to create a legacy she is proud of. Now, one thing she did not include in this bio, but that I also know, so I'm going to say, is that she has a podcast. Dr. Bove's podcast is called Love and Science Fertility. So check it out on Apple and probably other platforms where podcasts are hosted. So welcome, Dr. Erica. How are you?
Thank you, Dr. Sharita. I am great, thanks. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful and happy to be talking to you. So I
Likewise.
usually like to have you start by telling me a little bit about your professional journey. How did you come to be a physician and specifically reproductive endocrinologist? And now this work that you do in your coaching. So let's just kind of follow the
Yeah,
breadcrumbs.
absolutely. I am from rural Vermont, something that not a lot of people know about me. And I grew up in a medical family. So, my father, he served a lot of people as a urologist. He still does. And my mother is a nurse. And, actually, my late grandfather was an OB-GYN and he died before I was born. I will tell you, Dr. Sharita, I've always felt his spirit with me. And so,
Wow.
I think as I was growing up, I saw the impact that my parents could have in a small community like ours
Mhm.
and really be healers. I would be out in public and a complete stranger would come and say, oh, your mother did this for me, or your father did
Wow.
this for me, or my late grandfather, oh, he sang Danny Boy as he was delivering my child. And so, I think too, as an OB-GYN, the impact that you can have on people's lives and the meaning that you can create is
Yes.
is in many ways unparalleled. And so growing up, I loved science, I loved people, and so it just seemed kind of like a logical thing. I did explore other options, but I really got this idea that I was going to be a psychiatrist because I loved the human spirit. I loved figuring out what motivates us. But then I found OB-GYN, and maybe it was my grandfather's spirit with me at that time, but I just loved the very actionable problems of OB-GYN. I
Yes.
loved that, a lot of times we're working with matriarchs who are just like the centers of their family. We are helping people become matriarchs, if we're on my side in
Yes.
terms of the infertility journey. And it's just that the work is just so deeply meaningful. And there's often, not always, but there's often a problem and a solution. And that
Yes.
pace tended to, somebody needs contraception. Okay, we put in an IUD, problem solved. Somebody needs a baby delivered. We deliver the baby and then
Yes.
we help. So it's just those
Fixable
concrete,
problems. Fixable
that's
problems.
fixable problems, good relationships with patients, and I realized I love working with my hands. And so, I decided to go into OB-GYN and was hopeful that I would match into an infertility specialist specialty fellowship, which I did. And as I was going along, obviously we live our lives too. We're not just like these siloed physicians. I started to have some struggles in my relationship and struggles with my own parenting journey, and that's when I discovered coaching. So I really loved the way that coaching, again, very actionable. So it's
Yeah.
like problem solution. How are my thoughts and my feelings creating to how, contributing to how I'm showing up? And how can I change my whole experience of life, even by these small shifts? So, I decided because I had benefited so much from coaching to become a coach myself. And when I was in coaching school, that's when the light bulb kind of clicked. And it was like,
Uh,
this is what my patients need.
yes.
This is the missing link between our often broken medical system and those deeper, more human needs in terms of being seen, being understood, empowerment, making evidence based, educated choices. And so that's when I said, especially female physicians, I said, you know what? I'm going to create a safe space for women who are on this fertility journey where their values, where their identity are honored, where they can cry, where they can support each other. And that's what I did. So about a year ago, I launched Love and Science. It is my passion project. It is my life's mission. And I still work as a physician. I'm actually at my physician job right now at the end of my day because I spent all day taking care of patients, which I love. I also love that creative outlet of thinking, what are some unsolvable things emotionally that we haven't been able to figure out in the space of the fertility journey? And how can we use the available tools to come together in sisterhood and community and to really rise up together?
Yeah, I absolutely love that mission. And I think that, not that I'm saying that coaching is what's missing in medicine, but I think it's a component because,
Yeah.
we don't, we're taught or we're trained to look at the individual almost as organ systems, as a combination of organ systems, and we're taught to treat with medications and surgeries, but we often forget about the inner man, if you will, or inner woman, the soul and the spirit, and even the mind sometimes.
Yeah.
And so much of that plays into your health, your overall health, but especially when you're dealing with a challenge, something like infertility. So, tell us a little bit about some of the emotional struggles, if you will, that your patients encounter when they are having infertility.
Yeah. So I think, it's there's a lot of commonalities in what everybody experiences. I think the number one thing is overwhelm. Just, the amount of information that comes and the rapidity in which people need to make a decision or they think they need to make a decision. And also, the stakes are high, right? It's not like this is like, do I, get this nothing
Yeah.
against cosmetic surgery, but like, do I get this fixed or not? This is more like, how am I going to build my family? How am I going to pass on a legacy in this way? And I think there's a lot of pressure, especially that women physicians feel in terms of making the right decision, even if they're like an ICU physician or a sleep doctor or something
Yeah.
totally outside of fertility. It's like, this is my personal responsibility. So isolation, overwhelm, confusion, hopelessness, despair, feeling stuck a lot of the time, and truly at some level feeling threatened that maybe I'm not going to be able to become a parent, right? That's very scary.
Yes.
And also, maybe I'm gonna, and maybe this is my fault, right? They think there's a lot of shame and blame
Yes.
that goes around as well. So it's really kind of shining a light on where people are stuck and what their experience is, to then get them in a better frame of mind, help them feel differently, in a very authentic way, and then make empowered choices that are going to get them what, headed in the right direction and what they want and need.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that. So now you talked about guilt and shame. Do you think that that is tied to, well, no, tell me what you think that's tied to. I'm not going to make guesses. You tell me what you
Oh
think
my
that's
gosh.
tied
So guilt and shame. So I think it'd be interesting to talk for a minute about the difference between those two. So guilt really, if people who are listening haven't heard this distinction, guilt is I did something bad.
to.
And
Hmm.
shame is I am bad. I think,
Mm,
those are they're both very insidious, but I think it's
right.
the shame that really brings us down and gets us into this shame spiral that's really hard to get out of sometimes. And so I think, the mind plays tricks on us all the
Yeah.
time, and we look for evidence for confirmation bias, in terms of sometimes those negative thought patterns just continue. So I hear a lot from my patients and my clients like, well, maybe God or the universe just doesn't think I'd be a good parent. And this is like a punishment because I'm just not good enough. Or, oh, it's
Hmm.
because I dedicated my life to my career and, I'm not deserving and I can't have both. Or, I'm just looking through the window at other people's experiences and I'm left out of that. So I think that, there's a lot of personal responsibility that happens. And when there's bad news that happens, it's like, I caused this, I did this, I didn't make the right choices, and I am fundamentally bad. And that may sound very dramatic, but I really do think a lot of us, especially high achieving people, do fight a core wound of shame. And it's really, really important to realize, no, like you are deserving, you are
Yes.
worthy, this is your birthright. And even in the fertility journey, I love talking about this, is like it is our birthright to experience joy. Like we can have the
Yes.
fertility journey, which is so sorrowful, and we can have moments of joy throughout the day. But it's like, it's almost like we like punish ourselves. It's like, oh no, because this isn't happening, I have to, be kind of off on my own or wearing a black cloak or whatever it is. But
Yes.
it's really holding those things in tension at the same time and realizing that we are worthy, we are deserving, we are not bad. I talk to my audience, we are children of God is how I like to think
Yes.
about it, not to get too religious, but that helps me to come back to my inner light and my core. And then
Absolutely.
and then and then we just release those burdens that are holding us down.
So then how do you help them to feel the joy while they're simultaneously feeling so much anxiety and worry and overwhelm and not negative anticipation really?
Oh
How do you
yeah.
how do you marry those things?
That's a great question. So I think at some level, it's about honoring it all and realizing that you can have two coexisting things at the same time that
Mm,
may seem contradictory. Like a part of me is feeling anxious and a part of me is feeling hopeful. So it's not just like one emotion driving everything, but it's like we are a complex soup of emotions at every moment. And it's, and which emotion is calling the most for our attention. Okay, we honor it, we let it go. I do a lot with my clients in terms of processing feelings and embodiment because I think if we ignore things, they come out in strange ways. So there's
mhm,
certainly that level, which is really important. And I think that, I really start my program, which is a 3-month program, by bringing people back to their values and their identity. So we go back to what is the deepest why? Why are we doing this? Why are we on the fertility journey? Why do you decide to join Love and Science? Like, why are you here? And for some people, it's to grow their family. For some people, it's to become a parent. For some people, it's to, stop the pattern of intergenerational trauma. There's all these different things that come up, but when we can recenter ourselves on that deepest why, when the times get hard, right? That's when we can say, okay, this is my motivation. This is my reason for doing this. And then we can free up some brain space to say, okay, I'm going to set my, list of 10 things that bring me joy. And I'm going to do at least one of them every single day and be very intentional about that. I'm going to make my list of reset buttons that when I start to get triggered, when I start to get overwhelmed, I know these things bring me back to the present moment. And so I think a lot of it is actually about having true self-compassion for ourselves because it's that self-compassion that releases that burden that allows us to simultaneously hold the joy and the sorrow at the same time.
Yeah, I like the self-compassion, but another thing I hear in there is empowerment. And
Yeah.
I think that when we deal with things, especially medical situations, a lot of times things seem completely out of our control. And
Mhm.
like something is just happening to me and I'm an innocent bystander, but I'm suffering. I'm suffering because of this thing. But I think that in being able to make those lists and have those tools, that it's empowering. It gives you something to do and gives you some kind of agency over the things that are going on in your
Yeah.
life.
That is so timely because, we do our support groups every other Friday night, and the last one, we've had some members who have had some really tough situations recently, and we looked at each person's situation and we truly said, "Okay, how can we help this person take back some power, take back some agency?" Because the overall situation is not what we would want, right? But in this situation,
Right.
what can we change? Wait, maybe it's a mindset, maybe it's calling in additional supports, maybe it's something else, but I think a lot of times when we feel stuck, we don't realize how much power we actually
Right.
have, and it's helping
Absolutely.
us
Absolutely.
access it and not just by ourselves, in community.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Community is key. I think because it helps them to see, we talked a little bit in the beginning, or I mentioned in the beginning that infertility is really can be a lonely journey because, you look outwardly, you look at, media outlets and other things, and it makes you feel like everybody else is able to achieve this but me. There's
Yeah.
something wrong with me. And you talked about the shame, you feel shame because you can't do this thing that women were quote unquote made to do. And so
Mhm.
I think being in a community and being able to see, okay, I'm not the only one, that makes such a big difference in a lot of areas. But I would imagine it makes an especially powerful impact in this area.
100%.
Yeah. So now what have you found to be, so you didn't always do the coaching part. You did
Mhm.
infertility, but you didn't always do the coaching. Tell me some of the differences you see in patients now that have
Mhm.
undergone coaching.
Oh, that's such a great question. So, it's interesting because I never take off either hat, right? I'm always like a coach and a
Yeah.
physician. So, I think that I am better able to help my patients and my clients see where their limiting beliefs are keeping them stuck. And I will tell you, and this is again not about blame, this is not about any of that, but I really do think that on an energetic level, then when we believe that something is not going to happen, there's something that happens that blocks that possibility. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a very evidence-based scientific person, but I have seen this time and time again. I've
Yeah.
had patients, we go into the OR for an embryo transfer, doctor, this isn't going to work, and my heart just sinks because I'm like, "Oh, no." Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to believe it's possible for
Right.
it to be possible. So it's how do you hold that tension of that authentic hopefulness, right? Because you gotta have a foot in the door at least of the hope that it could work and let go of the outcome. So I think that's what I've learned to do since this coaching dimension came into my practice, and then also for my clients, right? Is that I hold the space for authentic hope and belief and help people let go of the outcome, if that makes sense. It's that surrender space that is so hard
Okay.
to get to. I mean, I think like you said, this applies to so many other aspects of life as well. But that is that sweet spot where I think that on a very energetic, scientific, cellular level, that's when we see the best outcomes.
Yeah. So then I guess then here's the next thing, and I don't know if you've done any like research, retrospective studies to look at what your outcomes are, but have you noticed better outcomes? That's kind of what I've been wondering. Like if
I have,
changing.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think it's really interesting because, well, I think that there's this, this connection between a patient and the doctor that has to be very strong, right? I think that connection is that trust, and that's part of that surrender.
Yes.
You can't trust unless you can surrender, right? And you can't. Well, I guess I said that. I guess that's true, and it also works in the opposite direction. Like you
Yes, I was
can't
gonna say you
surrender
can't
unless you
surrender unless you trust.
yeah, but I think it goes both ways, right? So I think that for me, in my coaching practice, a lot of people come and see me who, inexplicably have had multiple, chromosomally normal embryos transferred. And they're in that 5% of people or 3% of people who everybody else has gotten pregnant after that many transfers but them, and what is going on that is making it impossible for them to get pregnant or stay pregnant. And so, I had actually one client who came to me and said, I feel that I'm blocking this from happening, and I need you
Mm,
to clear up my mental space to allow this to happen. And at the core, in this wonderful person, she is now graduated from her REI, graduated from my practice, because she's my client, not my patient.
yeah.
But she said, "You allowed me to believe it was possible." I saw the shift in her. I remember the night it
Mm,
happened, when that shift happened. And, would you believe that her next transfer, after all these unsuccessful transfers and cycles and losses, her next cycle was successful. And now she's, well into her second trimester and everything is going well. But I think there are things that we don't necessarily understand. I just talked to my chair about how to study this. So that may
yeah.
be coming. Stay tuned for that. But there's something about, and we know this about cancer patients, that cancer patients have better outcomes when they have authentic hope and social support, like people praying for them. There's things that we just don't understand that are scientific, but when we incorporate them into the overall journey, that people just do better. Not only do they feel better, but they have better outcomes. And that's what I'm trying to bottle up, is that
Yeah.
support and that belief.
I absolutely love it. That's such a beautiful, beautiful story. And it just makes me wonder about the possibilities, I know we're talking about infertility tonight, but just medicine in general.
Yeah.
And I guess I should say overall health and wellness. Because again, we talked about before that, we underestimate the impact that our mental health and our mental state plays on the physical. So I agree with you 100% that, when we have a negative outlook and a negative we don't when we lose hope, we're less likely to have a good outcome. And it's
That's
almost like
right.
that it's like that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy and the stress. I mean, even on a very biological
Well,
level
yeah,
too.
exactly. There's that part, right. Go ahead.
We know this with weight management, we know this with other stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, you need to not stress as much." How do we help people do that? It's by processing feelings. It's by looking, that which we focus our attention on, that's what grows. So if we focus on, "Oh, my last 2 transfers didn't work and it's never gonna work," then that becomes a narrative. But we say, "Okay, well, the last 2 embryo transfers didn't work, and, I have 5 more good embryos and, cryopreservation,
Yes.
and I have had a child before." And like, we can actually focus our attention on the reasons we should be hopeful, not just like, this pie in the sky hope that is just, oh, we should hope, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about authentic hope, reasons that we can really tap into, that we can believe in scientifically. And when we can focus our attention on those things, then we start to believe in ourselves, we start to believe in the process, we trust the process, and that's when we unlock that key for having more successful outcomes. So, it is there is a way to focus on stress. There is a way to focus on the overwhelm that actually turns something over in ourselves that allows things to flow.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So now, how about the partners? Because the woman is only one half. Well, the person who's trying to become pregnant is only one half of the couple equation, provided that's the paradigm that we're working with.
Mhm.
So do you do any support for the partner as well? Because like she can
Mm.
come and have all these conversations with you and get this hope and have her limiting beliefs challenged, but you have another person at home who's maybe saying, well, we spent all this money and this is not working. And
Yeah.
how do you help them to navigate their I guess significant other and the other people in their lives that are maybe not being as positive and supportive?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So I always offer to my clients that I'm more than willing to, to work with partners and meet them where they are. I love meeting them at the beginning of the process. First of all, it puts a face to a name and it helps me understand the dynamic. In my clinical practice, I gave the husband a hug after I did an embryo transfer today. I'm like, he needs the good juju too. So
Yeah.
I do believe in this, but I think in coaching it's a little different. But however, I do believe that relationships are a dance. So I think that when one person is so overwhelmed, usually if it's a heteronormative relationship, like the woman is stressed and overwhelmed and blaming herself and all those things, when we can start to help her and support her, and, maybe she has more gas in the tank then to offer some appreciations to her spouse, that tends to shift things naturally in a way that like I have one client right now who's like, oh, my relationship with my husband is like the best it's ever been. And, 3 months ago, it was a lot, it was a lot worse right now, but now we're leaning on each other and we're supporting each other. So sometimes even by working with one person, you can then shift that dance to where, you know, um, people can show up differently for each other, which I think is beautiful. But I will say, I think, a lot of the times the other partners are, I don't want to say ignored, but it's like almost like they have
Mhm.
their whole world and they have their thoughts and their feelings and how they're
Yes.
showing up. And maybe they shut down, or maybe they, have a vice that they sort of delve in because they don't know how else to handle it. And I think, especially if we're talking about, a heteronormative relationship, the men, they often feel helpless, which that is a
Yes.
horrible feeling. Men are supposed to be the protectors and the providers. If you look historically speaking through generations, and when their partner, their wife is undergoing this process, and there's negative news and all of that, I think that a lot of times the men, they get angry and they have big feelings about things, and I say I'm there for all of it. I am here to support this family unit, and so I think normalizing the fact that men can have feelings, I think that's part of the
Oh, how
struggle,
about
is
that?
because
Yeah.
we don't think in those ways. It's like, oh, it's the women who have all the feelings. But the men, I think they have just as much feelings. They just express them in different ways. And
Yes.
so giving permission for those, validating the anger, it's like, it's not like, oh, you shouldn't be angry about this. No, you should be very angry about this. This is a very disappointing, frustrating situation. How can we work through it so that, the anger isn't driving the bus, right? So
Right.
I'm here for all of it. And, I would love sometime to have a support group of partners. I think that would be really, really wonderful. But I do think that a lot of the coaching tools, sometimes partners will send me a message like, hey, like, what are you doing in these coaching sessions? Because my wife is like totally, transformed. And I don't know. I think that, like I said, people can show up for each other differently when they have their own needs met. And I think a lot of anger is unmet needs. So when you can sort of crack into that and figure out where are people not getting what they need, whether, and a
Yeah.
lot of it's knowledge, like you talked about empowerment. Sometimes it's just saying, like, look, this is the data. Like, if you stay the course, you have an 80% chance, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. But I think that you have to figure out where people's needs aren't getting met, and then figure out a way to meet those needs, whether it's individuals or relationships, because that's when the magic starts to happen, right? You can't ask somebody to do something if their glass is completely empty. We work on filling the well so that there's
Right.
more resilience, more buffering, and then more relational space to be there for each other. That makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. Now, I want to shift a little bit to talk about stress, because I know we know that stress produces cortisol and has all of these negative effects on our bodies. And when you have a person who is dealing with a lot of stress, what are some of the things that you have them do? I know we talked about some of the lists that they make, but are there certain exercises? I don't know, meditation,
Yeah.
physical fitness. What are some of the tools that you give them to help to dissipate some of that stress?
Absolutely. So one of my favorites, it's so simple but so profound. Everybody feels better when they do this. It's just as simple as like a 2 to 3 minute exercise, and it's an embodiment exercise. So I think especially those of us women professionals, we kind of live in our heads, we live in our brains, and we ruminate. But if we can drop into our bodies and feel what we're feeling and release it, that's so powerful. So what I have people do is I have them like feel their feet on the ground, and with me we take 3 deep breaths, kind of ground ourselves in the present moment. And then I say, okay, what is your most pressing feeling right now? Who needs the most of your attention right now? And where is that feeling located? And so we locate the feeling in the body, and we breathe through that feeling. And so, sometimes it's like in the neck, or sometimes it's in the chest. For me, sometimes I feel my feelings on my face.
Mm, yes.
And, we identify, and I learned this from my mentor, Dr. Kavitha Sun. She's amazing. Does the feeling have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it have a weight? Does it have a stickiness to it? Is it red and fiery? Like, what is this? Truly, I know. But like when you start to really do this exercise, you're like, oh, it's like a black sticky tar that's all over my cells, or oh, it's like this vice that's like around my heart space. Like, these feelings, they have these very particular characteristics. And so when you can identify what those are, I say, okay, so you breathe into it. So we breathe together. And oftentimes that feeling starts to spread out, it starts to become lighter, it changes, it moves. And then, we do 3 deep breaths to close. Sometimes in the middle, there's a message that the feeling has. So sometimes it's like, okay, what is that feeling trying to tell you? If it's like anxiety or something, usually it's the messages like, you know, we thank the feeling, we honor the feeling, and then we tell the feeling, thank you for protecting me. I've got this. I don't need you to be so loud anymore. I've got this. So it's like this
Yeah.
conversation between, and then we release the feeling, we come back to the present moment. And it's just like everyone who does it feels lighter, feels more present, more grounded, because I think a lot of our problems are when we either live in the past or live in the future, right? If we think
Yes.
about, we regret the past decisions, we beat ourselves up, we worry about what's going to happen in the future. But hey, like, I mean, right now,
You're,
I'm living my best life. I'm on this call with you. We are talking about how to support our healers. And, I'm not worried about a thing. I'm fully engaged in the present moment, and we're sharing in this community in this beautiful conversation. And so when we can bring ourselves back to the present moment, it is so powerful, and yet it is so hard to do sometimes, especially if we're not trained to do that. So that is one of my favorites, and I think it applies to people at all different stages.
yeah.
Another one that I do, and I lean on my Australian colleagues for this one, is that 2-week wait when people are waiting for the pregnancy test is just,
Mm,
it just goes on forever. And, people are trying to show up at their jobs and take care of other people, and,
yes.
but it's like the ruminations and the fear and the anxiety, they're just crippling for so many people. And so we do guided meditations live. We also have it's on actually Spotify. So I'm happy to share that if your listeners are interested. But there's a set of meditations that these wonderful women who have a clinic in Australia do, and they have these wonderful Australian accents, so calming, so powerful. And so I say, why reinvent the wheel? I have, my patients and my clients listen to those meditations as they're waiting to find out. They visualize the embryo taking, they
Mm,
imagine their womb as a safe, supportive space. And I actually have them listen to it before they do the IUI or the transfer or whatever, just to kind of get themselves into
yes.
that forward thinking space. And then, and I like one of my clients, she just loved the meditations, and I love meditations myself. So, I offer that to my patients to help them breathe, get back into their bodies, understand that all will be well, and realize that visualization of this working, I think, is part of that authentic hopefulness, that people know that hopefully it will work, and if it doesn't, they can handle whatever's on the other side of that.
Yeah.
That's the other piece of that.
I love
Yeah.
everything about this.
Thank
I
you.
just have to tell you that. And so, so I want to know, I know that you are a coach. I know that you are being coached because we actually met in the same coaching group.
Yes.
So, so I'm assuming that you subscribe to this notion of constant evolution, constant growth. So where are
Yes.
you going? What's next? Because I love this
Oh,
beautiful
yeah.
journey and I am excited.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I think that, I think about the personal and the professional, they're not always so separate as we think. I think that for me, I tend to be fairly type A, and I call myself a recovering perfectionist. So, where I'm growing is trying to create intentional space in my days where I have time to reflect. It's unscheduled time. And for
Mhm.
me, the scheduling feels very safe. And I also know that I have my most creative times, my most nurturing times, reflective times when I have that space that is unstructured. And so, on a very personal level, that is something that I'm doing to evolve, because I know that that is a very important part of my self care, to slow down, to reflect, to nurture, because I need it, and because it also then becomes the wellspring for me to continue to give and serve at
Yeah.
this very high level. On a professional level, I think, growing the practice has been so beautiful, and, figuring out ways to use art to help my community, to bring people together. When we don't have our support groups, we have a WhatsApp chat that we share inspiring things that we see, and we support each other. And so, really just thinking about, creativity at the highest level in terms of, serving and new innovative ways of dealing with these problems, that since people have had infertility, we have these problems, right? So how can we use our tools, use our
Yes.
creativity, use our community, to be able to approach them together? So that's sort of where my brain space is these days.
Okay. Any thoughts of cloning yourself?
Ah, you know, I think that
So
sometimes
you wait a minute,
it's
hold on
really.
though. You do some training of other REIs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm in a program where there is a fellowship, and so, every day my coaching hat comes out and I challenge comments in the moment. I'm like, "Wait a second, we think about that differently." So, and I think it's you have to walk the walk. And so I think it's really important. Like, I am very rigorous about getting enough sleep, eating good food, exercising. Like, I know for me, faith is spirituality, praying. All those things are my building blocks that are non-negotiables these days because I know that I need it. And so I think that, being a model for other people, supporting each other in that is really important because we really have to do that. And when I say that, I think about you and your retreats, and it's the quality that matters, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you offer 25 retreats a year, but they're like the same model and they only go surface level, like that's not really serving anybody. But if you can really say, I'm going to put my resources into this very high quality experience, I'm going to give people, the nourishment that they need, that then becomes the
Yes.
wellspring. We're going to go deep, right? We're gonna do this very intentionally. That's really the space that, it's not just doing something because it's the way we've always done it, or because
Right.
it's going to reach the most people. It's being very thoughtful about what is the quality of the experience that I want to provide for people, and what needs to happen on all the different levels for me to be able to do that at the highest level,
Yeah,
right? And I see that
absolutely.
in your work as
Actually,
well. I think that
yeah,
focus
I
on
actually thought
quality is.
about actually thought about the retreats when you were talking about how you're spending your time, like your personal growth right now, that you're taking time each day to kind of reflect. Because I
Right.
think that's what for me, that's what the retreats are about. That's kind of the hallmark of them, is an opportunity for you to kind of just put everything else away, leave the responsibilities aside and spend some time with yourself, because we don't ask ourselves those high quality questions very often. Like what, well, okay, what's going on with me? Like you talked about, with the patients who are facing things and getting in touch with their feelings. Why
Mhm.
am I feeling like this? What's causing me to feel this way? And then actually, even having a dialogue, an inner dialogue about it. Okay, so I'm feeling this. Why am I feeling this? Is this
That's right.
true? Is this accurate? Just beginning to have those kind of conversations with ourselves, I think it's empowering, and it's also healing, because you
Very
can
much
see
so.
see some places where you've had blind spots for years, and the light bulb comes on, and it just opens you up. You're so inspired to do things in a different way, and just to notice your own growth is amazing.
That's right. That's right. And I've always loved to journal. And I think it's really interesting when you journal, you can look back and be like, oh, where was I at this time last year? Or, what it's interesting because some things change, but then there's themes that emerge too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a beautiful thing. But you're right. We do need to spend time with ourselves. We need to ask ourselves those deeper questions. We need to ask, what do we truly want? Is how I'm living my life in alignment with my values? I think
Right.
that's one thing that this coaching has really helped me with is like, I have a like almost like a internal thermometer or calibrator that like when I'm not living in alignment with my values, even if it's like a slight shift off, I'm like, oh, I have that awareness now. Before I don't even think I had that
Yeah.
awareness, but now it's like, oh, something's not right. I need to reground, recenter. What do I need to bring myself back before I get too far off course? And I think it's a learnable skill. We can all do it, but I think when we're so used to doing for others,
Yeah.
we don't always learn it or value it. But it's what's going to save us all, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I have loved this conversation. I love what you do. Please
Thank,
keep doing it. Please keep helping people. I think
thank
you
you,
should clone yourself
thank you,
because,
thank you.
it's just really exciting to me. I've always been fascinated by kind of the mind body health relationship. And so it's really exciting to me that it's getting to be more recognized, more acceptable, even the fact that you are noticing that making those kinds of changes, having those coaching um, interventions are helping with your outcomes. So I am
Yeah,
really excited about that, and about all the possibilities that lie ahead for medicine. So
thank
for
you.
patients, or not necessarily patients, people who are interested in working with you either as a patient or as a coaching client, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes. So the most comprehensive place is my website. It's loveandsciencefertility.com. I also have social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram. And like you said, I started a podcast several months ago. So I now have many episodes. I love it. It's so fun to do it. And so, listen to the podcast if this intrigues you, because there's little kernels of wisdom that people tell me they get a lot out of it. So thank you. I just love talking with you, Dr. Shrita. You are just an example of somebody who really does, practice what you preach, live your values every day, and you just shine. So thank you so much for being that light to us. You inspire me. You inspire me to take care of myself even more, and to just nurture that light within. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. Thank you for coming and sharing with us. Like I said, I am super excited to see what the possibilities are. So I'm always over here watching. I'm
That's
watching from
right.
the
Likewise,
sidelines.
I know.
If I run into folks who need to, need your services, I will definitely be sending them your way.
Thank
And I'm
you.
just so happy that you were here and able to share with us tonight. So, guys, if you have questions for Dr. Erica, definitely put them in the chat. I will make sure I get them to her. If you know people who need her, please send them her way. If you or someone you know needs that rest that we're talking about, that break to get away from your day to day responsibilities and time to reflect, to get in touch with yourself, to hear your inner voice, to know what you want, what your soul and your spirit needs, and what your path forward is, what your values are. Because I often say that the reason that so many people are so unhappy is because they've built a life that's based on old values and old priorities, and we haven't given ourselves permission to restructure our lives. And I think that especially is especially true of professional women, because we go through all of our paces, our educational and professional paces, and we get to the place we've arrived, whatever that means. We've got to get to this place where we've arrived, but then we add other things, so maybe we've delayed our family, and then we try to integrate a family into this already full life. And really, it requires some restructuring so that we can honor our desire to be present for the family, as well as to have the career. The career can't always be at the forefront, or maybe it can, but it's what works for you. It's what's
That's
best for
right.
you.
Yeah, there's
you
so
know
many ways, there's so many out of the box ways to do it, and you're right, it's kind of like, when you buy new clothes, right? You can't, like, just, like, stuff it into the closet, you gotta, like, take some things out and donate it to make space for
right.
the new. There's so many examples of that, but you're right, there's the permission to restructure,
Yeah.
and truly sometimes less is more.
I love the clothes analogy. I'm stealing it. I might give
Okay,
you credit, but I'm
okay,
definitely stealing it, because you
got
think
it.
about it. You think about it. You have these clothes that used to that maybe you loved at one point, right? They were in style, but they don't fit it. They don't fit
They don't
right. They
fit,
don't
they
look
don't
right.
and
They
they
don't
might
go with
even fit
today.
physically. I'm like, that doesn't fit my personality anymore, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
We evolve,
Exactly.
we gotta keep evolving, so, yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, there we have it. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Like I said, if you're looking for anything like that, A Weekend for Me is your place. www.aweekendforme.com. Registration is still open. I have not taken down the early bird, so go ahead and get your early bird spot, even though early bird ended yesterday. And follow Dr. Erica, send people her way, and we will see you guys next week. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining us. And
Thank you.
share this episode. If you're watching, especially on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like, to subscribe, and then share this episode with anybody you know who is facing infertility, especially, but any kind of challenge in their lives, and can benefit from the wisdom Dr. Erica shared tonight. So thank you very
Thank
much. We'll
you.
see you next week. Take care.
See you next week. Bye.